snap. I think it's another brief moment in time when we get to see the change of the tides. The shifted, twisted bit technology showcasing the little bits of safety, while the quick trips are surely randomly sparking the photons around me. Let the light flow from the heat, yo. When the photons ignite, highlighting, yo, then you know it's that time when we force a change in tides. A little bit lined with something in us. It's almost like we something else, autonomous, or maybe perhaps it's that missing piece you needin'. Perhaps it's that simple message you searching. Perhaps it's just a different time framing us for the next adventure in the mainframe. Getting excited, so are the photons. Don't laminate so we can change the coupon. Let me raise the hash rate, submit the coupon fake, and reduce the rate while we mine our major bags. Crypto technology like cryptographic money will hash in your life into a set of QRs. It doesn't matter cause it's time for 3D changes perspectives. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Well, yeah, welcome to the show, everybody. It is me, 3D, and I hope to change your perspective today on, well, a generalized topic. It's basically some information we've seen online. We're going to see, is this FUD or is this based? That's the whole thought of today. Is it FUD or is it based? We're going to go through the perspective. Now, there's almost always varying perspectives about basically everything, right? So especially like constructs on stuff like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, it reigns even more true. So today I want to look at a perspective of Bitcoin or BTC, and we are going to ask the question, is this FUD or base? But however, unlike giving a single rating of the perspective, because this is a very large perspective, we will rate the various sections within this one perspective as FUD or based. So sometimes reality exists even within FUD, and so let's find out where the FUD is, where the base is. All right. Well, first I have to admit we have partnerships and sponsorships I need to go ahead and shout out and talk about. All right. So first off, I want to go ahead and thank DeOrganized for teaming up with Bitcoin Live Digital Broadcasting, DB, because Bitcoin Live and DB and DeOrganized is a powerhouse combo. I see new heights for both organizations, and if you haven't checked out any of the DeOrganized early morning broadcasts for stacks and other topics that seem to be basically taking off every morning, well, go ahead and check them out on Twitter and other social media platforms. Basically anywhere you're watching this except for Odyssey. You pretty much can watch them wherever you're watching this at except for Odyssey. All right, now I got to thank the sponsorship. So I want to thank today's sponsorship, Shieldfolio, for sponsoring today's episode from within a quantum bit, as well as the Bitcoin Live DB network. Now, if you haven't seen a Shieldfolio, it's like a little black book made from stone paper. So it's like fade resistant, tear resistant, and even water resistant. So you know the info and secrets you store in your Shieldfolio will last and survive whatever you throw at it. I personally have a Shieldfolio. I use it for everything from like my website info to contacts, crypto keys, to anything I don't want on my computer or online. It's my little black book. They're pocket sized, ready to be by your side, regardless if you venture in real life or online. And I honestly do love these things. Now, right now, you'll see a giant QR on your screen. We have a small one on the bottom of the screen throughout the entirety of today's episode. You can scan either one of those. It'll take you directly to their website. They have all sorts of neat stuff, but only on their website. Use that code BitcoinLive20. Get 20% off your purchase today. So I want to go ahead and do the roll-ins, and then we'll get started, I believe. All right, and again, thank you, Shieldfolio, for sponsoring today's episode, because, well, you know, as I'm gonna say the thing. Welcome into the photon of the greater fourth dimension's quantum machine. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do this like this. So throughout today's episode, while we're on any one of these, we're going to basically do this little thing. Oh, look at this. So while we're on any place, you're going to see this QR pop up. Like, for example, right here, this is the Organized Media. I was talking about them earlier. So if you want to go ahead and check them out, again, every morning they got that Bitcoin and Stacking Stacks live streams. So go ahead and check them out, see what's digitally popping on their what you call it. So, all right, that QR basically that's on the top right-hand corner, that's going to always take you to wherever we're at. So I know the YouTube link system, especially with the AI thing in the description, it kind of messes up a lot of the links, and there's nothing we can do about that. This is the secret, though. Use your phone while you watch, or if you're watching on your phone, take a screenshot and then later use the QR reader smart system in your phone to actually read it. So you don't have to worry. You can always follow along. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys today's free pre-search query. Which today's free pre-search query is proof of work blockchains after coins are fully minted, surviving the exhaustion of fresh coins. Aren't you glad you don't have to type that whole thing in there? Look how long this thing. It's a line of work. Okay, but anyways, like always, I did not use this query in today's episode research, but that doesn't mean we won't have overlapping links. And if anything about today's episode actually interests you, whether it's a debunk or rather it's fodder based, then this query should help you find more information that will interest you. Just replay after the show and then come over here to scan the QR with your phone or QR reader. It's just that simple. Now let's go ahead. Before you jump into that river hole, let's jump into the one for today's episode. Now, okay, there's this thing popped up. What does that mean? It means we need to have a little break. We need to actually catch up on some quick deets. So basically, everyone may have an opinion on Bitcoin. Okay, it doesn't matter if they use it or not either. They most likely have an opinion. So one of the reasons why some of us in the cryptocurrency space, for a long period of time, they kind of look at these perspectives with like a yeah or nah viewpoint. And this is mostly like because information is an attack vector. If 1,000 people online said the exact same thing about something, it may become searchable. And if any perspective becomes searchable, it may trend. And if a perspective trends, it may be spoken about in the mass media. Now, if something is spoken about in mass media, even if untrue, it may become self-fulfilling prophecy. So by fighting data with data, they can actually sway in which way mass media may potentially talk about something. So that's basically what we're going to do here. We're going to fight data with data, and I'm just going to attempt to sway you instead of mass media. I'm going to attempt to sway your perspective first, because believe it or not, your perspective per person, individually, is the most important perspective you have. We're going to jump back in. Here we are. Okay. So this is today the person's perspective we're going to be talking about. So this is Justin Bonds, and he put out a post, and just before we get into that, we're going to look basically at who this person is. Basically, we're going to just look at their bio. That's it. You know, huge work being done today, right? So Justin Bonds is the founder of a cryptocurrency fund in Europe. Cool. That alone should tell you one thing. Regardless of anything, the perspective will most likely be price related. If his bio was about mining, it most likely his perspective would be about security or a similar argument. You could still have a price point argument there. If he said, and where his bio said influencer, it would potentially be like a political or a spoken line attack vector. But what I see here is founder, fund or corporation, researcher, and words are my own. First off, that last part, words are my own, that just means that he may have perspective not shared with his business as a whole. And this is normal nowadays to see, so that's fine. But it's something on his bio. The researcher part, I really didn't actually expect to see this part, but it does make some sense when we get into his perspective. So, or actually his post. So that was, so basically like profiting off the system in some way outside of mining and owning crypto. And that is fine to do, but it does show price is probably his most important intent. It should be noted that very few will actually work for crypto that works in the crypto space. So that again is like he's working for non-crypto and crypto within crypto. That's normally that's we call that a red flag. It's not a bad flag. I mean, everyone got to make their fiat, right? Or everyone's going to use fiat in some way. But when you're working in cryptocurrency, it's considered to be better practice to accept mostly crypto. But and we're going to get into the actual post. Okay, so we have all of the thingies today set up in a manner where we won't have to, hopefully we won't have to backtrack. All the backtracking is pre-done. All right. Okay. Oh, wait. It said mention pinned tweet. He had a pinned tweet that I was supposed to mention, and I completely forgot. I already closed it off. Too bad. So we are going to review basically this lengthy perspective, and it is quite lengthy. And we're going to do it in sections. The entire tweet is a series of statements that potentially stem from the same few constructs. So let's start diving in and finding out what Justin really has to say. So BTC will collapse within 7 to 11 years from now. First thing, the mining industry will fall as the security budget shrinks. Actually, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We're going to move over a little bit. I'm going to bring this back in. So first, mining industry will fall as the security budget shrinks. That is when the attack begins, censorship, and double spend. Core will then have to increase inflation beyond 21 million, splitting the chain, and that'll be the end. The code and the math do not lie, as this can all be verified independently. We must prioritize the truth. Now, that's probably the whole that line right there. That's why the whole reason why I got put onto this idea of talking about this perspective was that line. It said, the code and math do not lie. This can all be verified independently. And that is what we're doing. We're going to verify what this man says independently, like he says it can be done. That's the whole point of today's episode. Okay, so now, before we go any further, I'm going to repeat this one last time. He said himself, the code and math do not lie. This is all verifiable independently. So that's what we are doing. We must prioritize the truth. No matter how much we love the idea of Bitcoin, BTC is an emperor that wears no clothes. BTC actually is no emperor. It does not exist. It's just something we created that's a database. And we're going to get into how that is. But we got to get into his broken security model. That's really his first point. Like this first top point, you can say is probably his entire thing condensed. And we can see what he's claiming is Bitcoin will collapse within 11 years. And that's not that far away. And he's saying that it's going to start because the security budget is going to shrink, so mining will stop. And then there'll be open room for attack and censorship and double spends. Now, the censorship part we've covered before multiple times, and we'll probably keep covering over and over and over as we keep going, because it changes as you continue. So some of this stuff is like a continuous thing that you always have to fight against. So it's like, well, basically everything he's talking about, you have to always fight against. So a lot of this is very speculative to me, my perspective. So the broken security model, this is the first main point, right? Okay, let's see. Well, my thingy says to hold off on that. We're going to move over. Because I'm looking at my notes. And my notes literally are like, oh, we're going to cover some stuff before we get into it. So, here is the Bitcoin. Wait. How did this get moved? Oh. Okay. So, here's probably... there was supposed to be a hashing rate box, and I don't see it. Oh, there it is. So, here's the Bitcoin hashing rate right now, okay? So, we're, like, right in this range, okay? So, the Bitcoin hash rate has gone down within, like, the past, like, what? Couple of months? But in general, it's still higher now, right now, than it was literally like 10 days before its peak. And so it didn't really move much at all. It's right there at that 10 days before the peak. All right. Now back to what this was. Okay. Here's probably the best, like, most information on the construct being argued here, which is many don't realize that, like, basically Bitcoin entered the game of digital currency, or when Bitcoin entered the game of digital currency, there were already coins in action. There were already using blockchain verifying databasing for additional double spend protection. Basically, like, people figured out with Darkcoin, I think already had it basically, like, without them realizing they were doing it. I think they just already did it, like an index basically. And then like Beancoin had an index, and then uh, I believe it was Hashcoin, or gosh, man, I can't remember the names of all the coins anymore. With the hash one, I can't remember the name of it. Hashcash. People, like, started using them on their own. They started building their own community-based, like, versions, and that made this huge difference. And so, um, like, when Bitcoin entered, there were already people, like, this was kind of like a growing concept of just people doing it to help each other out. And the argument, like, really being given behind this now, or let me go back to what it actually says. The argument being given behind the price point wealth action cannot sustain past fiat inflation, especially with the current standings of such stuff. Then you will always see things like cost to attack and such will always, of the concerns individually, make some sense seen. Like, all in a, like, packed fit shows the flaws, but it's all price action talk anyways. None of the systems are considered as a whole, but individually they're working parts that are being considered. They have no influence on other parts, is how it's being considered. I'm going to say that one time. None of these systems are being considered as a whole. They're being considered individually working parts that have no influence on the other parts. When in reality, they have influence on each other, right? And so we have one line. You see there's one line in this entire thing that is highlighted, right? It's a source. I think that's the most important information right there. And this entire piece of document, out of all of this, see that source? Miners revenue from blockchain.com, CPI data from St. Louis Fred. Freed. I don't know. Doesn't matter. This is what they're talking about. See this dip from here to here? See how we got this, like, yeah, that's what they're talking about. That's all they're really talking about. It's happened before. If you look over, just like last year, this happened before. Okay, let me make sure. Okay. I got notes on, like, every page, so I'm actually reading them this time. So there is this thing here that basically tracks the price action to show the miners earn. And if you look, it says total value in USD of the Coinbase block rewards and the transaction fees paid to miners. Okay. So that's what we have set here. That's what it is set to. So notice how, like, when the value of Bitcoin went from like 100,000 when it was like in this range, and then it went under 90,000, the wealth earned also dipped, right? Okay. And so if we basically show this same thing, not in USD, if we showed it in Bitcoin, we would actually get, like, a completely different viewpoint. So you see how we have, like, red and we have the blue. So the blue is the actual, like, amount of US dollar earned, and the red is the market value. So you can see that the value price does have a lot of influence on whatever the median is of this line. So we're going to go in here and we're going to change the market value, and we're going to go to Bitcoin. No, okay, total circulating supply, Bitcoin. Wow, that is a straight up graph. Imagine that. It's almost like the supply only gets bigger. It's actually really important. You see how it quickly changes? There's other ways to look at miner revenue. You know what? Let's look at different charts of similar data. Same construct, payments to miners. Now, I also want to do this 3 years out. Oh, well, hey, what's this huge spike here? There was a giant spike. Oh, Hey, look, total circulating supply. That was a halving point, huh? Imagine that. That was a halving point, huh? Let's go to all time. So we'll see. Oh, my graph just goofed on me. Come on. No, we want the total circle. There we go. See how it looks now? It's much more curved. Okay, so we're gonna go to the other ones. Let's do this. All right, so this is cost per transaction. This is chart showing the minus revenue divided by the number of transactions. So this kind of shows you how much money they're making per transaction, right? And we can see the market value has a whole lot less influence on it, but it still is directly influenced by it. But this does show when there's a lot more transactions, which might help explain these types of graphs and stuff. Like, why is there a big, huge dip there? But we look at something that's similar years, similar timeline. Oh, look, okay. I can see right up in here, there was a huge spike in transactions and stuff, while there was a huge spike in price. And so we get this spike. Okay. And it says, oh, yeah, there's that straight line again. Massive. Okay. There's another one. Output value per day. The total value of transaction outputs per day. This includes coins returned to the sender as change. Now, okay. So this potentially is one of the better charts to show for Bitcoin security budget, since this shows the output beside the market price. So let's put the USD to Bitcoin and see what happens. Like, we just, right? Which one we want to put it to? Really, this claim that this person is stating, this claim that this Reddit post is stating, because there's been a decline over 45% since March of 2025. And if we go in here and we look at March of 2025, back up. We gotta go out. Yeah, this one. So, wait, what? Oh, come on. So March 2025 is here. I couldn't find it here. June 2025, May, April. There it is. So March is up in this area. So we have this one spike here in March 2025. To where we're at now, it's not. It's that much. You notice how it capping kind of at the market value. Kind of a telltale sign there. So this is a problem, basically. Like, making the entire constructs off the data that doesn't really matter nor correlate with the perspective. Because they're saying that because the value of the amount of money the miner is getting per time they receive a block reward or something, then, well, their budget has gone down. What up, Roadkill? See you in the chat, ghosting up. But so they're like, hey, because the miners are not, earning as much US dollar capability, there's this problem. Well, there's a lot of miners that don't even sell their Bitcoin. They leverage their Bitcoin and things like that. Like there's other ways to use your Bitcoin as wealth. And that's things a lot of people aren't considering. And they're also not considering, like, not everybody mines the same way. Not everybody mines on the same equipment. Not everybody has the same budget for mining. And the security budget they keep calling, I wouldn't even say that my Bitcoin has a security budget. There's no actual funds set to the side basically for security. It is a protocol within the system that develops that budget for security, if you would say it that way. I'm trying to use the same terms he's using so we can show you the difference. Like they're saying that basically there is a set amount of money set in Bitcoin just for the budget of security. And when I'm saying no, it's actually a procedure within the protocol to set a budget. So you can change that procedure, you can change that protocol. And they're saying the way that they're going to have to fix this is by changing the part of the protocol that says there's a limit of 21 million. Okay. And the correlation of the value price and the correlation of how much money the miner receives have nothing to do with each other. They receive a specific strict block reward, which if you say anything is one of the, it will slowly die off. It's depreciating model or security model or security procedure within Bitcoin. And then the other part of the security is that there is a transaction fee. But there's also a tipping system. You can also tip miners. Like I have low-end miners that run all the time, and they have been tipped before where they didn't get a block or anything, but they were a part of a something, and I wasn't in the pool, but someone in the pool still tipped me. And it was like, cool. I think I was like one of the first like witnesses of the block or whatever. And so I was like, I witnessed it happen or whatever, so I got tipped for it. And so there are other ways that people are being rewarded for mining. And I think like somewhere in their argument, there's something about industrial mining. I think that's probably like their biggest. That's actually the biggest thing there that's probably more accurate in their entire argument, is that there's a chance that when the block reward goes down to zero, null, or basically nothing, then we'll be relying on those tips and those miner fees. And so then industrial mining organizations, a lot of those will fall. They will change to something else, and a lot of them already are. That's actually the real reason for this hash rate dip, was a lot of miners, and I'm going to go back further to actually show it, but somewhere in this area there's, if I can get my, so around January 2025, there was a huge dip in the mining because a lot of miners switched to AI. Same thing over here in like May and April of 2024. Same exact thing. And we've seen stuff like this in the hash rate before, where there was another way to profit, like when hard drive mining started becoming a thing, which is not, it was its own like separate thing. Like we saw a dip in the Bitcoin hash rate then as well. It was a different type of mining. So it got people to move around for that wealth. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin mining, is you can go in and out on the fly. Okay, so I got one more point in this note. It says, if someone was to say, to be more accurate and more honest, someone could say Bitcoin has an unpredictable profit and security budget. And then I could agree with you, because that's really all the data shows, is that the wealth in USD of the Bitcoin output isn't equivalent nor reliant upon the price of the same Bitcoin produced and paid to the miners at the same exact time. That's actually what it says. That's what this data really shows you. All it really says is the Bitcoin output isn't equivalent nor reliant upon the price of the same Bitcoin produced and paid to the miners at that specific point in time. Okay. So, we got to go here. We're back here. Now, I just realized I might not have given you guys all of these QRs. This is blockchain.com. they have a whole bunch of graphs. You can check them like whenever you want and stuff. So you can always call them out, and like you see, there's a big long list right beside me that I can just click on and change the graph to check out that information. And transaction value per day, it's one of the things in here. We have more we're going to show you guys, because basically these graphs are kind of the tools and the things they're using for this argument right here. And so we're just going to basically use the same graphs and tools to argue, to verify their argument, which so far, the first part of the argument is unverifiable. It is FUD. What he is claiming would mean that there's a direct correlating price of Bitcoin to amount of wealth miners receive. Problem is, if you don't consider that wealth in the value of US dollar, you consider it in the wealth and the value of Bitcoin, which is what they receive, they didn't lose any money. There is, drop in the security model. They get less Bitcoin each time, right? And they're still mining, though. They were mining back when there was no value in Bitcoin. And that's the best part the hashing graph shows, that they've always been mining. As far back as 2012 is when mining for profit really took off. But that's when a major bug in Bitcoin was found, solved, and squashed. Well, it was actually squashed in 2010. And 2012 is kind of like when the reins were handed over. So a major bug was squashed, and then everything kind of went more public than ever before. And that escalated the mining. So people have been mining when Bitcoin is literally worth nothing. They'll do it again. So we're going to come back here. We're going to, okay, so as it stands now, Bitcoin must either double in price every 4 years for a century or sustain extremely high fees, only to maintain the present level of security. That is because each halving exponentially lowers the security budget derived from inflation until it's practically nothing and prices falling to keep up. Now, something I really should have had for this, but I didn't, but something you can always look up, is there was a point in time when the Bitcoin mining surpassed this special number. There is a magic number that when you calculate all of the possible hashing, any or all, I think it was any and all countries could produce, like their governments could produce at any point in time. Like Bitcoin's surpassed that like a long time, years ago. And it stayed surpassed over that to this point, to this day. And that's something that they're not talking about. Like, we could lose a lot of hash power in Bitcoin, and its security would still be top notch. Because there is no one country, and there is no total amount of country governments that could turn on and take over Bitcoin hashing. Now, I will tell you someone who might be able to do that: AI companies. Especially all these AI companies that have tons of GPUs and things that exactly Bitcoin mining needs. And if they get enough centralized power, they could all just flip on, take over Bitcoin, and flip off. Now, we've gone over before how much money that's going to cost and stuff. I think we do it later here too. And that's probably the most, like, security fail we might see, is something from like that. And centralized power is something Bitcoin's always been against, because it's obviously used as a weapon. Okay, so let's read down to the image. Let me see, do I need to read what's, if you have basic understanding of economics and exponential functions, then you should know that this is entirely impossible, as it would exceed the global GDP within decades. That's why BTC security is fundamentally unstable. Fees will also never reach sustained extremes due to the ratcheting effect of the fee market. Paying hundreds of dollars for a single transaction is not realistic in a competitive fee market. When fees spike, users leave, all due to unnecessary. Now, one of the things I hear, when fees spike, users leave, that's a security model within Bitcoin. The the whole fact that fees spike in Bitcoin is one of the features of security in Bitcoin. Like that's a feature, not a bug. It's also when Bitcoin can also get slow. People don't even realize this. Bitcoin has been running like within like under 10-minute blocks and stuff like that for years. Where like even being able to say, oh, Bitcoin's real block time isn't 10 minutes. It hasn't been 10 minutes for like 4 or 5 years now. I want to say 6. But I think 6 years ago is when we started seeing the average block time of 9:58, 9.58 minutes. And now I think it's, the last time I checked, it was like 9.13 or something like that. So it's like it keeps getting down to ridiculously low levels, which you think about that, it's slowly, naturally on its own getting faster. No one has to adjust that in the code. It's doing it on its own. And something people don't realize is the code considers block time and the time it takes to check that difficulty. It's actually based on a calculation based on when a specific type of VAIO computer or laptop from like fucking 2010 or no 2008 2007 VAIO laptop. They were produced with like an integrated GPU type thing or a really good CPU, and actually I don't think it had an actual GPU, it had something else. And so it was based on how long it took for that to calculate 256 SHA hash, and that's because that was the testing device or whatever. And so like the block rate isn't based on actual 10 minutes. It's based on this average amount of times it takes to calculate a SHA hash. And think about that. It's like, okay, that's why Bitcoin naturally adjusts. It's actually not based on like 10 minutes. It's based on this hash calculation. So the faster we can do that hash calculation, the quicker Bitcoin will become. Quicker Bitcoin is. Well, as long as we don't get to a point where we have too many natural fork points or anything like that, Bitcoin is more secure. Okay, because it's a natural block adjustment time. That's why. So now the value. Okay, so here in timeout, like it's basically impossible to do because it would have to exceed the global GDP. And I was like, we ain't that far away. So here, we're going to go ahead and give you, this is basically just an AI output, but it also gives you a bunch of links and stuff. And I asked, list me all the times Bitcoin has surpassed a GDP. Well, in 2017, Bitcoin surpassed GDP of most countries. Or surpassed, oh no, of countries like, my bad, I read that wrong. Of countries like Iceland and Luxembourg. 2021, it surpassed the countries like Ukraine and Peru. 2021, it also surpassed the countries of like Chile and Portugal. And find out more. So then I was like, well, I know there's more. Oh, imagine this. So here is a point in time when there was an erasement of value in Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin dropped at some point in time, right? That drop in value exceeded, it was larger than the GDP of like major countries like Belgium, Sweden, Ireland, Argentina, and Singapore. Dead serious. The value lost from the change in value of Bitcoin, the wealth loss and the change of value of Bitcoin was larger than these countries' GDP alone. Like, of course, Bitcoin can reach beyond the value of global GDP. It's not related or based on anything that is GDP's related on. So it has nothing to do with them. So, of course it can, because GDP doesn't correlate to it. Now, one day, GDPs might actually include country Bitcoin holdings. And then it wouldn't be able to surpass it, because the value of Bitcoin would then increase GDP. Alright, so then there's this. Okay. So on September 21, 2025, let me get you a spot where this is a little bit easier. See? So in September 21, 2025, Bitcoin's market cap was higher than most countries' GDP in total. The only countries who had a higher GDP at the time was just 6 months ago, where the United States, China, Germany, Japan, India, United Kingdom, France, and Italy. So the only countries who had a GDP higher than the value of Bitcoin's wealth, which was just 6 months ago, was United States, China, Germany, Japan, India, United Kingdom, France, and Italy. Those are the only ones. It's already gotten to a point where it's almost surpassed the global GDP already. Like, we're not that far away. So of course it can surpass the GDP. Again, in order for it to not be able to surpass the GDP, something about the GDP would have to be related to the value of Bitcoin. It's the only way that the value of Bitcoin could not surpass the global GDP. Simple as that. So what's next? Oh yeah, single transaction fee. Okay. Am I in the right spot? Yeah. Let me zoom. I keep zooming in on these things, right? All right. So, this means that okay, no, I'm about to right past it. Fees will also never reach sustainable extremes due to the ratcheting effect, right? We already read that part, right? Paying $100 for a single transaction fee not realistic in a competitive fee market. When fee spikes, users leave, all due to unnecessary and arbitrary capacity limitations. Key word there, unnecessary and arbitrary capacity limitations. My sir, my gosh, my word. Those are personal perspective terms. Unnecessary and arbitrary capacity limitations is speculation. Because, well, I will save my reasoning to the end. This right here directly shows something about this person. Most likely, this person came in at the end of the block wars, and they felt like their voice was not heard during the block wars argument. I was one of the people that felt like their voice wasn't heard during the block wars argument. I was one of the people that was bitching and complaining that I was been there since since 2009, and I could not get my voice in because I didn't have as much wealth as other people. I didn't have as much prestige online, which this person here, Justin Bonds, has more prestige online. Absolutely. He's verified, therefore he has more money, therefore he can have that prestige. And a lot of people don't realize that's kind of one of the reasons where prestige comes from. It's all about the amount of money you have to put into it. So this means that Bitcoin's long-term security is unsustainable without extreme high transaction fees. Fees that have no fair failed to materialize with the exceptions of fee spikes. Now what he's saying is because the Bitcoin value cannot surpass the global GDP, then they have to rely on transactions eventually, right? Transaction fees. Okay. That's what he's saying. This is why the security of Bitcoin inevitably will continue to decrease until it becomes profitable to attack. This is how we will know that approximately the timeline for collapse is 7 to 11 years, and it is based on the halving cycle. Therefore, in other words, Bitcoin is most likely to collapse within 2 to 3 halvings from now. Something that this person doesn't seem to be pointing out, registering, looking at is the fact that before the Bitcoin halving, Bitcoin was going to run out of Bitcoin to give miners by now. I believe 2024 was supposed to be the last year. If we had never stopped, it would have been 2024, something like that. It would have been super fast. And the fact that there is a halving reducing that means something. Okay? Now, let me read my notes about this transaction thing that he's talking about. Because we see he has a picture here, Bitcoin total transaction fees, and he's showing you this big long spike that happened in the 2024, which we were kind of looking at earlier, right? So, to me, honestly, I couldn't at first determine the possible reason for this part of the argument or perspective, but the point of paying hundreds of dollars for a single transaction is not realistic, which is based on actual ties around the base point is a pointless argument. Like, it's basically you cannot pay hundreds of dollars for a single transaction fee. That's not realistic. That's a base point. Okay? It's like, no duh. People cannot pay hundreds of dollars for a single transaction. But transaction fees isn't really the security model of Bitcoin, which is the point of the invalidness of this argument. Like, I know earlier I said, yes, it is, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is, like, there's a large portion of future Bitcoin security that was always considered and talked about heavily early on. The people kind of stopped talking about 2013. Okay? So, he's tying Bitcoin security out of Bitcoin hashing. Well, would they not produce block rewards? But perhaps he is trying to sway Bitcoin transaction fees, or just trying to sway rewards will one day not matter in wealth amount. Either way, either he's trying to say they won't produce block rewards, which we know is true one day, or he's trying to say that one day the rewards are going to outweigh the wealth, or there won't be enough there, right? So either way you slice it, Bitcoin transaction fees are just a standard practice that doesn't have to exist and could even charge undeductible amounts of fee transaction that have to be paid out via BTC values. So what I'm saying is there at least used to be a way, there probably still is a way, where you can actually charge an unchargeable amount of fee transaction, where you can put a sub fee amount and it gives you a VBTC value, but you don't actually pay anything. So this makes the overarching argument that transaction fee is a Bitcoin security model, when the security model is Bitcoin hash rate plus number of Bitcoin miners. So I'm going to give you the actual intended Bitcoin security model. Bitcoin hash rate plus number of Bitcoin miners plus distributed node watchers plus consensus model with random picking system. That's the actual Bitcoin security model. Okay? That's the true model of security. The security of people. So like we're talking like Bitcoin's network security is the Bitcoin hash rate plus the number of Bitcoin miners plus the distributed node watchers. I'm missing something. Plus the consensus model with the random picker system. Okay, that's the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin user security. Users attacking, right? Users doing malicious things. That's the transaction security. And that's the other thing that he's not pointing out. There is like multiple security layerings within Bitcoin for different reasons. It's not just all of it or none of it, right? We can secure the network from various autonomous attacks. Okay, that's why we need the Bitcoin hash rate to have be over a certain limit, so no government can take us over at any point in time. Those are the people with the largest amount of lying around hash power, besides now soon to be AI companies. So then you include the number of actual Bitcoin miners. So when we say the 51% attack, 51% attack has to be 51% of the hash rate and the miners. People forget that. And one of the ways Bitcoin does all the syncing stuff is you have to connect someone very close to you and someone super far away from you. It has to happen that way. You have to have one close and one far. And so every time it syncs, it goes one close, one far. New sync, one close, one far. New sync, one close, one far. And so you get this random pick distributed system, even amongst like syncing. And when you're thinking about that, what is syncing? What does that have to do? You want to get a bunch of new miners out there? You want to get a bunch of new things out there? You got to have a bunch of new synced nodes. So you got to have that synced setup. So it basically prevents people from being able to spawn randomly on the fly, just jump on and do actions immediately. They have to have some amount of distributed time wait. And that, again, that's why we have the number of miners plus the 51%. Like, if you have 51% of the hash rate, well, you might not get picked very quickly if you're not synced. Or you won't get picked at all if you're not synced, right? And the more synced you are, the more chances you are to be picked. So, like, when you got 100% synced, you're synced with everybody else, you have the best chances of being picked. And then now now you still have to outweigh the rest of the miners, because you might have 51% of the hash power. Well, you still get randomly picked just like everybody else. So it doesn't mean you're going to be the next pick. And again, so that's why we have the distributed node watchers. We have all these other systems in line to do these different things. And so when you go, oh, well, these things about the security, well, it's unfortunately extremely complicated, which is one of the reasons why people in this space take this nah approach on things, because we can't even look at how we secure one thing the same way based on how that attack is going on, or based on how we look at it. Because, well, the security changes, the scenario changes, the life doesn't stay the same. Alright, so what am I seeing on my thing? It says go right here. Okay, so here's the past year of fees per transaction on Bitcoin. So let's adjust to the full span to get a similar graph that we saw in the tweet. So this is just the last year. We're going to go to the last 3 years. This is closer to what he was showing. We see that big, huge, large spike. We see more spikes. We see larger spikes. Let's go to all. Oh! That spike thing happens. Wait a minute. It happens around halvenings too. Is this a natural occurrence in Bitcoin because of the halvening? Well, yes it is. Why, yes it is. We can even see it all the way down in here, where we have a halvening right there, and then we have this, we got the halvening, and then we got this value spike, we got this halvening, this value. Oh, yeah, it does. It does do something. So we see a spike in 2017 for Bitcoin not being ready for major adoption. Like when you look in here, there's this huge spike in 2017. Well, it's actually 2018, right? And it wasn't ready for major adoption, but got major adoption. So the transaction fee, then a price burst after without major loss from the hash rate. So the spike in transaction fee caused an eventual price burst, which did not create a loss of hash rate, which showed that Bitcoin software wasn't ready for more people joining in so quickly. But wait, isn't this transaction fee a security model? No, it's a part of a natural flow of Bitcoin. And this is the whole reason why, like sure, it's security, but it's a natural flow of Bitcoin. It's something that's just naturally there. This whole like happening to price transaction fee spike to burst a bubble. That's what I'm talking about. So this natural cause and effect in Bitcoin that is from like the consensus model and the distributed decentralized mechanisms within inside of it, with also time not being a part of the Bitcoin mechanisms at all. This natural flow was discovered with previous online currencies and after blockchain databases were being used to protect its history. So it's like in this case with Bitcoin, the flow of previously known about. Oh, hold on, I skipped the line. That's because that's why most of the flow in a cryptographic system is the system security, because like in this case with Bitcoin, the flow was previously known about and could have code processes modeled by it because it was a reliable outcome of the actions at play. So this makes the full claim FUD, since the entire claim is loosely based on half-truths of subjective perspectives only. The whole thing started on a half-truth of subjective perspectives. And we're going to show you every single time that pops up in one of his argument states, we're going to bring it up. Okay. I got to refresh this again. So it says, change the market price from USD to average block size. Average block size? Yeah, average block size. Wow. Huh. Imagine that. When there are spikes in fee transactions, there's also these spikes in block sizes. like this 2.2 megabyte block size. Or this 1.9 megabyte block size. This is basically my proof of the overarching transaction fee as the security, since the security model relies on hashing and transaction fees. Will one day fresh hashing new coin output will not exist, or it will be less than the individual transaction fees. Okay, so the whole natural point, blah blah blah. The whole reason why we say we can determine his argument failed is we can see the correlation in block size to fees, meaning every time there's a spike in the fee because there's a spike in transactions, that causes a spike in block size, which then helps take care of the spike in transactions. Oh, it adjusts itself automatically, naturally. Imagine that. All right. Measuring security. Okay, so, all right. Okay. It says read. I have to read it. All right. The chart of miner revenue shows that Bitcoin security is actually lower now than it was 5 years ago, proving the decline of Bitcoin security, as it shows how miner revenue or block reward, not hash rate, is down. Now, he says block reward, but miner revenue is more than just block reward. Because if it was only block reward, well, this would be an only down graph. Like, duh. Like, we've already seen the block reward down graph. You see this, like, orange line that dips down? Boop, 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 boop. That's the block reward. Okay? So, and it's showing, look, it's down, 5 years ago. It says. Weird. It was really low just a couple of years ago. Like 3 years ago, it was super low. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to be steady at any point, although it is more often nowadays. And, hash rate does not equal security. Most Bitcoin influencers do not understand how proof of work works, leading to a profound public misunderstanding of Bitcoin's failing security model. I actually think this guy doesn't understand how hash rate does equal security. It's a different type of security. So this guy, his entire perspective seems to be completely around the price point argument. And he doesn't want hash rate to be a security model, which it is. Because if hash rate's not a security model, then his entire argument is true. He can make anything he says truthful because hash rate is not security. The second hash rate is security, it denies all of his argument, because then we can say one day people may have stuff on the blockchain, or they may have their own amount of wealth in that blockchain currency, like Bitcoin, where just running the mining is more important to them to keep that security or to keep their stuff in their control, like the general public control, than anything else. Like, it's a database, right? People are actually storing stuff on Bitcoin all the time. There's already a point right now where there is so much stuff on Bitcoin that there are people whose entire lives are related around securing that for any cost. They don't care if they lose money. It is about the securing of that. And a lot of people say, well, you can't have a forever losing cost fallacy, blah, 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 blah. If you're not a business, you sure can. There are people who will put money on the line for things they believe in forever until they die, because that's what they believe in, and they can. All right. I'm drinking some coffee. Give me a second. Alright, so I do have a note that says the entire argument behind the Bitcoin security model is that hash rate isn't what secures Bitcoin. It's the block reward paid to miners that secures Bitcoin. The problem is, with this perspective, is miners are getting more than just block rewards per block. Some miners are not even a part of the block finding process can be tipped on chain. We kind of talked about that earlier. So, got a big thing here. So, this right here, okay, this is fees per block. This is the amount of fees paid per block. This is not including the block reward. And if you look, there are points in times where the fees are within 5 Bitcoin. That's quite a bit of money right now. I don't care who you are, even at the lower Bitcoin price, that's still quite a bit of freaking money right now. And even at like $1, 5 Bitcoin, it's quite a bit of money. So it says this historical chart of the Bitcoin's fees per block in Bitcoin to USD. The orange line is the average fees per block in the last 30 days in Bitcoin. The green line, which we don't see a green line. Okay. No, one's in Bitcoin, one's in... So they're not showing the USD version right now. That's fine. They're only showing the fees per block. Perfect. Fine. It does have a US dollar thing on the side, so this was valued at $100,000. That's probably why the value there isn't up. But anyways. Right there. Oh, I do have, so here's the thing. There is more than one fee per block. Oh, yeah, that's right, too. There is more than one fee per block as well. And often that amount of Bitcoin earned per block in just fees can be quite a large amount of, oftentimes equaling over 1 Bitcoin. Since Bitcoin can be mined on nearly anything that can process at least 1 gigabyte of 1 gigabyte of SHA-256 hash data at a single point in time, and it can mine Bitcoin. That is why the cost to mine 1 Bitcoin isn't a good backer for things, because everyone's cost to mine 1 Bitcoin isn't going to be the same. It's going to be completely different, and they're going to take completely different lengths of time to get there. So just like that, you can't look at a Bitcoin security based on transaction fee per transaction. You have to look at it per block. To even give it that line of light, you have to look at it per block. But this isn't when we get this isn't even what all the miners even get, right? This is just the fees, right? This isn't even all they get. Okay. It's important to know. So something that does happen on chain are tips. And I just asked this AI, Presearch AI, how do you tip your miner BTC? To tip your Bitcoin miner, you can send a small amount of Bitcoin to their wallet address as a gesture of appreciation for their work. Make sure to include a note if possible, and ensure you have the correct wallet address. But like someone's here, like I used to give and receive Bitcoin tips, up to $50. Basically, like one of their tips ended up becoming like a lot of money, becoming worth a lot of money one day. And that's the real thing about it is you might mine one time and then someone might tip you years later. It is a thing. Okay. So this is the miner's revenue. This is that thing we were showing earlier, remember? We were showing this earlier? Okay. So this is set to the 3-year mark. So you can kind of see here that the average payment per block is now what we're seeing in the white, and miner's revenue USD is in the blue. Okay. So hold on, I'm getting to the right spot in my notes. Okay, so this is the miner revenue chart again, and yes, more than just block reward. Anyone paying attention would have noticed Justin got block rewards and total earnings per block, which are not the same. He got them confused, and they're not the same. So even if you go to his picture, it says in the image, Coinbase block reward and transaction fee, and I'm talking about this image right here at the top. We read that earlier, right? Okay. So, and let me, since I'm right there, he says, right here, miner revenue is block reward. Miner revenue is not block. It's not just block reward. Okay. So, where was I at? So even to this picture, it says that the Oh yeah, we read the image. Yeah. And again, this is all in USD value. It all changes by just adding average payments per block. So this is the average payments per block, right? And we can see that there's sometimes a lot of payments in those blocks. You know what I mean? And okay, so there is a lag trend or prolonged trend of higher number of payments per block spikes created equivalently towards the spikes in miner revenue. Again, this payment to miners lags behind the trend line of number of payments per block, but it is there. And that's because there's an actual system of Bitcoin that like delays payments. It delays payments to miners. So now let's adjust from the USD to Bitcoin. Oh, okay. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going to point out that, again, um, oh yeah, Bitcoin pays miners 60 days after they get the reward. So that's why there's a lag based on that. Huh, look at that. So what we do see is that every time there's a halvening, there is a drop in transactions, total transactions per block, or payments, per payments per block. Now, what that really means is that eventually that number is probably going to go back up. If we click up all, we can see, yes, there's a natural decrease in that thing. It does that naturally over and over and over. It's just a common thing. Okay, so it's common, it's natural, it's a formation in the system, and it dips, then recovers, and we can see the only time so far it hasn't recovered is in the last, like, what? That's very tippity top of all payments was in 2015. We had more payments in 2015 on chain, more payments per block than now, actually than ever. Well, what happened in that area of 2015? Well, I mean, we had the block wars, we had stamping, we had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of spam on chain. The other thing is, though, right after like this December 2015, yeah, so right after this huge spike, there was a major change in the protocol that basically allowed us to reduce what we see, so to speak. Like we can kind of hide more into the numbers, and it really shows. And so I would say you have a better argument to claim that that major change in the Bitcoin protocol created a decrease in value possibility, but it's still higher than what the this one. Wait, how is this? No, that's 2020. Oh my gosh, it was telling me the wrong year. So it was 2024 was the highest spike ever we've seen. Now that makes more sense because I thought it was Taproot that caused that dip, and it was. It was Taproot that caused this and caused this. So the other spike I was trying to look for, 2020, way down here. It's way down here. Yeah, 2018. We can't even see what's going on before that. Can't even see that what's going on before that. Crap. It's basically the same thing. The chart just does it faster. It's because we're zoomed out so much, and I just now realized it's mistagging on the spot that I click. That's why I was saying 2015 earlier. It was actually 2024. Because it should have been Taproot that caused that drop. And what it was is that there was a lot of stuff that was going on to the chain right around there that we figured out how to basically take a bunch of transactions and make them look like a single transaction. So now multiple payments are turning into a single payment and things like that. So this is the average block size throughout the year, and we have it paired average transaction per block and the average block size. And now we actually see a direct correlation here. This is way more direct correlated because if we look at how the the up and down spamming is going, and within the amount of density that spamming is happening, it's happening the same in both spots. So we're having it, the average block size and the average transaction per block definitely correlate to each other. So the number is people have been securing Bitcoin. The reality is people have been securing Bitcoin even when Bitcoin is worth nothing. And as more and more people use Bitcoin as a database, which has been increasing over the years, well, then more people will want to secure Bitcoin through hashing because they have data or something tied to the chain that's not directly the currency. So to help explain that Bitcoin is a database first and a money system second is, well, the average block size per 24 hours over the past lifetime. That's what you're looking at right now. The average transaction block does not correlate to the amount of data stored. The average block size per 24 hours. So we do see a direct correlation, but they're still not tied to each other, right? Like they don't have to be in sync. We always see that lag. We always see the correlation. We don't see the sync. And that's directly because one affects the other, and therefore, like these thousands of transactions were possible thanks to 1.86 block, and then we had a huge spike of 1.86, 1.6, and then 1.67, 1.64. So it just slightly moves up in huge number increase, and that's because, well, it's like, no, they're clearing up the meme pool. And that's the other thing, like these big, huge, directly where we see both correlate at the same time, that's meme pool clearing. And so that's the other thing that, like, you can do this, you can use this chart to check certain protocols within Bitcoin. Did this happen? Did the meme pool clear? Well, yeah, having happened. People stopped transacting so much, value went down some, meme pool cleared, hash rate went down. Okay. Common. And then what happens after that? Well, now all the things are down, so people are putting back into Bitcoin, and then people start using Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin goes up, and then everything kind of goes back up. Oh, exactly. Okay. Now we're attacking Bitcoin. Now, I mean, we are actually closer to being done than it seems. Okay, so attacking Bitcoin. Read about this and go down to image, review image data. Okay. So crypto economic game theory relies on the punishment and reward, carrots and sticks. This is why miner revenue determines the cost of an attack. That's doesn't I don't see how that makes sense. Okay, so let me read that again. Maybe I missed something. Crypto economic game theory relies on punishment and reward. No, game theory relies on punishment and reward. Crypto economic has nothing to do with game theory relies on punishment and reward. That's it. Okay? This whole carrot and stick thing is his example, and if you think about that, it's like someone on a donkey with a carrot and a stick, or someone on a horse with a carrot and a stick, and they get the horse to do the work trying to get the carrot, and they can never get to the carrot because of the stick. But people who work in game theory systems get paid by reward, and if they fuck up, they get punished. Like, crypto has nothing to do with that, okay? And it says crypto economic, but let's be honest here. Cryptocurrency, although it is unique, blah, 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 it is not its own economic sphere, okay? It's its own financial sphere. It's not its own economic sphere. It's a part of the digital economic sphere. So there is no crypto economic game theory, because then that would also mean, like, not just cryptocurrency, but cryptography. People forget crypto actually means cryptographic. When we say cryptocurrency, we're actually saying cryptographic currency. And so no, cryptographic economic game theory does not exist because there is no such thing as cryptographic economics, because it's just digital economics. That's the other things. Like, he's constantly using crypto in place of digital. He's constantly using security in place of models or procedures or policies, you could even say. He's using the words wrong. And as a researcher, you'd think he'd be able to use these words correctly. He'd actually be able to, but he's actually using them in a manner that is manipulative. He's using the terms all throughout the whole thing manipulatively. You know, and that's why I keep saying it's speculative. Like, so far, he's only saying speculative stuff. He said, I think, maybe 2 actual truths throughout this whole thing, and then he completely diverts away from that truth to talk about something else. He just brings up the truth and he goes to something else. Okay. So my notes say, oh, no, hold on, let me finish reading. I just now seen my notes real quick. I gotta actually finish reading. So, double spinning with 51% attacks target exchanges is a highly realistic attack vector. That doesn't even make sense. How would in a 51% attack on chain target exchanges? So let's find out. An attacker could make billions from such an attack. What attack? He didn't explain any attack. There is no attack vector explained. How are you attacking these exchanges that choose to transact on chain? Which 99% of all exchanges that are not decentralized exchanges, so almost all centralized exchanges, handle all their stuff internally and then batch transact to the chain. And so, no, you can't directly attack that. Now, you can attack a decentralized exchange, sure. That's already being attacked all the time. Like, that's already a problem. Like, and that doesn't have anything to do with the Bitcoin chain. So let's go on to how his hypothetical attack that he never explains could make someone money, I guess. Especially as they could target multiple exchanges, defaulting them from at least 100 million. But how? How? Researcher, you have to explain how. It's really important. You can't just sit here and say, the double spinning attack. What double spinning attack? How are you going to double spin attack on an exchange? How are you going to target exchanges with double spinning attack? Are you talking about like the $6 or $7 double spin that Coinbase, specifically Coinbase the exchange, committed, where they allowed a transaction and then forced it on chain, and even though like only they see it on chain, everyone else can see it as a orphan block? You're talking about one of those? Because those have to actually be done by the exchange, not the other way around. And the only reason why Coinbase can do that is because Coinbase mines a shitload. So they have like their own mining sector. And when I say that, I mean like even in the memory of Bitcoin, like there's ways that you can sync up where you sync up Coinbase first. And there are ways where you sync up where you don't sync up with Coinbase very much till the very end. And you'll notice a difference in the data logs. Some spots in the Coinbase one will say, oh, well, there's these other transactions or whatever. And in the main one, well, the transactions still work out, but not in the manner they think it does. And so it looks like a double spin, but it's not. Depends on how you sync up your node will make it look one way or the other. It will either make it look like a double spin or make it not look like a double spin. It all depends on how you read the data. And that's kind of what this is pointing to, the reality of the problem. It's all about how you read the data. So an attack could, okay, read that, yeah. Especially if we could also include simultaneously carrying out exploits on decentralized protocols. See, not explaining anything. What exploits? What exploits? Like, he doesn't know. He's just making it up. And I think that's what this really shows. I think that this shows that he doesn't know. He's saying, well, if A, then B, because C, because of that D. And it's like, sure, but A has to happen. And if A never happens, then your argument is just flawed. And if your argument is just flawed, you're lying. You're at least lying to yourself, okay? So the basic premise is that an attacker sends their own Bitcoin to an exchange, trades it for another asset, and then sends it back to themselves. Problem here. First thing, whoop, red flag. The attacker is then able to roll back the chain due to 51% control of the hash rate, at which point they would then regain their Bitcoin. But then, okay, here's their attack method. I'm going to exchange my Bitcoin for a non-Bitcoin currency, and then I'm going to roll back Bitcoin to get my Bitcoin back. Well, you're talking about a zero confirmation attack. And as long as you go through an exchange that doesn't do zero confirmation, that's not going to be possible. So basically, the only way an attacker is going to be able to do this is at a Bitcoin ATM. Oh, and almost all Bitcoin ATMs have switched to the 6 confirmation wait period, which is the average confirmation wait period. And most Bitcoin exchanges have a 6 to 12 confirmation wait period. So this would only be possible under those two circumstances. You're going to a Bitcoin ATM that's not using it. You're going to an exchange with a zero conf. Let's just say it that way. An exchange with a zero confirmation security procedure in that exchange. Okay? And as sad as it is, people have already done this without having to do a 51% attack of the entire Bitcoin. There's no reason to. You just simply need to go to an exchange with zero confirmation, transact with them, and then transact that same transaction as a return transaction to yourself on chain before they can do their batch transaction. That's it. And that's not a Bitcoin attack. That's directly an attack on the exchange's own exchange security. This puts the lowest attack threshold to a few $1 million per day. See, now here's the thing that starts to make his entire argument completely, like, it doesn't make any sense after this. He is now claiming he can put a price point on attacks based on some information that's based on half-truths that doesn't correlate to each other. So there are two half-truths that he's talking about that have no correlation to each other, that he wants to correlate, because if they correlate and this other thing called hash rate doesn't actually secure the network, well, then Bitcoin is totally ruined. Problem is, the network is secured one way, the software is secured another way, the user interactions on chain are secured a different way, the exchanges are secured a separate way. None of the security for these things are the same. And he's trying to say, well, they're all the same, but they all individually work separate. And that's what I was saying at the beginning, is he was making this claim that these are all individually working systems that don't correlate or well, and I keep saying they don't interact with each other, or they don't respond to each other when they do. They don't correlate. Like data graph A, data graph B doesn't always correlate. But action A and reaction B does always correlate. So I can't take most of his information even serious, because he is trying to put numbers to things that makes no logical sense, because he's trying to make claims things are security and things are not security when it's the other way around. So this also means that on a scenario of a blockchain network worth over 2 trillion, look, I don't care what his numbers are at this point. I can't. Anytime he puts up a number, we have to have a spot where we're going to attack his math. Anytime he puts up a number, I'm going to have to stop talking about it. We're just going to have to skip it. Hypothetical, because like if we look, this all he's saying is that an investor can invest money to then attack Bitcoin. That can already happen. Okay, but look at what's going on with AI. People are investing billions and billions and billions in AI right now. Right now, and they still don't have enough money to attack Bitcoin. Okay? So hypothetically, for example, it would be quite low if China, again, some hypotheticals, stop giving hypothetical on something that I still don't say you've proven. You never did actually prove how the Bitcoin's security model has gone down in value, or security budget has gone down in value. Like, you haven't really explained that, because your whole reason for what the security budget secures and how it secures that denies the actual security part, which is the hash rate. So then he says, keep in mind that more prominent BTC at this time, the more profitable. So it doesn't matter. So it says annual security budget percentage of the market cap. The percentage of the market cap doesn't mean anything. Market cap is the amount of Bitcoin times the price. That's what market cap is. How many coins times the price per coin? That's market cap. So market cap has nothing to do with anything other than price perspective considerations only. Well, the problem here is Bitcoin works outside of US dollar. Has nothing to do with US dollar. So when you try to translate it into US dollar, you are doing exactly what I just said. You're translating it into US dollar. You are going, it is not 5 Bitcoin, it is X US dollar. And that's not proper. Sure, it's not even right. Like, you can say it's worth X dollars. Yes, it's not X dollars. So when you say, well, we got to look at the annual budget, the Bitcoin's, well, that's not going to work, because the market cap, as it grows super high, that bar is going to get really small. And as that market cap goes down, all because of price value, but the amount of Bitcoin produced, we know that exact number. You don't even have to show a graph. Like, it's preset, right? We know exactly when it's going to go to what. We know all this. This can be put on a calendar better than the weather can be put on a calendar. And then the fees are always going to change. And so you can't look at that either. You can't look at that in consideration, the market cap either, because, well, the fee is in Bitcoin. It's not in US dollar. All right. Now, it says here, I have a big long thing, and some of this relies with some of the stuff that he said. Now, he says this means that Bitcoin is never too big to fail. That's a true statement. Bitcoin, nothing is ever too big to fail. As long as it fails to generate fee revenue to sustain its own security budget. In fact, this attack only becomes more viable, not less, with increased adoption. Okay, all attacks become more viable with increased adoption. That's an automatic. Like, nothing what you do there is going to change that. So he's trying to put these two little truths together and say, well, because Bitcoin isn't too big to fail, it becomes more attackable as adoptions increase. No, everything becomes more attackable as adoptions increase, because there are more people involved. There are more eyes on it. There are more interested parties. There are more reasons for systems to want to be, there are more. There's just, when more exists, more possibilities exist. All right. Now I read the rest of that. I can actually read what I have. What I have says just how this starts. Crypto economic game theory relies on punishment and reward, carrot and sticks. This is why miner revenue determines the cost of an attack. Shows the lies right there. You cannot put the cost of an attack based on the wealth value of return for mining by average. The way an attack costs on the attacker is because of how the random time block element works in the consensus model. This shows that the person isn't even considering the consensus as a part of the Bitcoin security model, which it definitely is part of it. And once you consider that attackers are working against a random clock, no one can measure directly. When we say random clock, we mean random picker. Sorry, that was just mix up in language. Because the random clock is when that random picker executes. So that means that the cost to attack has no equivalency or anything to do with what wealth is earned on average per block from miners. like if someone is mining at home in a pool, then multiples of people got paid, not just the one in that pool. So that could be life-changing wealth for some of those people. And that is the just that, or is that just expected cost for the conglomerate miners? The actual wealth earned per miner is based on the miner's perspective at the time, and solely that. Some people mine Bitcoin for about $5 or less a day on machines that have been getting solo blocks. Here's a solo block tracker. Alright. Here's a great way to sort through all the blocks to find solo miners finding blocks outside of pools. Okay. Solo CK, public pool, another. So these are like pools known for running individual miners on the pool. And we can sort it through a few different currencies. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Especially since small factor miners like NerdAxe miners have been finding blocks, this means that tech as cheap as a car insurance payment for 1 month or less can actually make you 100 times more money in one block discovery. So here's a site thing. It says NerdAxe++ finds its first block number 913272. It landed with the ocean mining pool tag on meme pool. With the social media began exploding, multiple social media bans on X talking about how it's winning because using Ocean's datum setup, turning a home rig into headline news for Bitcoin. However, because the NerdAxe was hashing through the ocean mining pool, the operator did not receive the full block reward. They received the proportional amounts that they put into it. So this is one where they were mining with a pool, and they got it, so they didn't get the full amount. But this is a really small block, device. This is one of those. It runs on like $5 a day on electricity, and it found a really good block. This for the person who for this person that was life-changing money for them, even though they received a portion of the block. And here's some data on how all this works or whatever. And so it says, let's talk about the odds of using the network. Network difficulty at that block was over 136.4 trillion terahashes. The hash rate was 4.8 terahash at the default, which was default for the miner. The network hash was 1 zettahash, so all these right there, per second. And 4.8 terahash was this many hashes per second. So the expected time was about 4,144.66 years. So based on just what the current network hash was and what this person's hash rate was, their expected time to actually find a block was 4,144.66 years. That's how long that's how long it was supposed to take them to find a block. Okay? This shows you that probability maths are just that, probability. Reality makes a huge difference. So that translates to the solo odds of approximately one for per day. It was 1 in this huge number. Per week, it was 1 in this number. Per month, 1 in 50,000. Per year, 1 in 4,145. Nice. Okay. So they showed you how you do the math to actually turn that into what the odds really mean. And so if that's the only block he finds, then he got this 1 in 4,145. Nice. Oh, okay, hold on a second. I did have something else on this one. Let me read you what my notes say. So here are some people that sell or are involved with small factor miners like the NerdAxe specifically, which are they are repurposed large-scale miners that were no longer profitable. But the chips that do the work are recycled to become now profitable. And now, instead of, say, one person profiting from one device, that same device is now profiting about 20 or so people's. Wow. Old minotech is reused for the not so rich. This is one of the ways that miners keep securing the network. They find systems and they go, oh, this no longer secures the network as well as it could. How can we make it work better? And they find that way. Here is the block. This is the block, okay? This is the block that a device that costs less than $300 USD at the time of receiving the block reward that was estimated about $350,000 worth in Bitcoin. That's a huge difference. Sure, they didn't receive that full 3-point whatever block, but they received a large portion of the block, and it was life-saving money for the individual. And if we actually look, quite a few transactions in here. 67 pages of transactions. Holy slaps. Lots of transactions. Okay. So, I've considered how to determine... oh, my bad, I said that completely wrong. I was reading two different lines. So I have covered how to determine cost to attack Bitcoin. And the total market cap value is used in many of these calculators. But you know what else is used in many of these calculations? Total hash rate per block. Hold on there, though. You know, there's a better way to determine this for yourself. Which obviously you just come in here and you do it. You know, you look. Okay, look, Bitcoin right here. What's this nice hashable value? This is something a lot of people don't even realize. Okay, nice hash is a system that allows miners to organize and pull up that has been used to attack blockchains in the past. Directly used to attack blockchains. So it's actually used as an attack vector minimum. If nice hash can attack you, you're screwed. People wonder why not very many people use our chain. I wonder why. I mean, honestly, lots of people still use it. It's just the people who are using it, they are using it in a manner to where they don't have to worry about that. Oh wow, Catcoin, 10,000% nice hashable. Wow, Hush, 13,000% nice hashable. Wow, Stonecoin, 15,000. 2,000,000% hashable, nice hashable. 7,000,000% nice hashable. Mooncoin. Mooncoin is 7,000,000% nice hashable. Oof. And there is a button here where you can actually learn more about how all of this works. So you can actually educate yourself a bit more if you want to. Alright, so we're going to go to the next one. Here actually is a calculator. Here's one way you can adjust and determine the actual cost to attack the chain without any value of Bitcoin involved. This doesn't even ask you what the value of Bitcoin is. It doesn't know what the value of Bitcoin is. It doesn't matter what the value of Bitcoin is. Oh, attacking Bitcoin doesn't actually matter what the value of Bitcoin is. Oh. The only time that it matters about what the value of Bitcoin is if you're going to purchase your way into the attack. Bitcoin is not a purchasable attack method. It's not a proof of stake. Only proof of stake can be purchased into attack. Now, I'm going to read my notes on this. That's because actually determining the cost of attack to Bitcoin changes based on everything, including how the attack is actually done. So the claim about 51% attack being 2.x million in X years to attack, well, that's just an annual cost of electricity to attack Bitcoin to control the hash rate right now. Like, it is already nearing $2 billion in electrical cost to operate for a year. Okay? Hardware plus that is an additional $5.5 billion. Okay? So the hash rate would have to drop substantially. Or a completely new way to attack Bitcoin would be needed in order for that said X year attack to be capable, like the guy said. Well, the guy didn't actually say how the attack would be capable, so the attack at all wouldn't be capable. Because he didn't describe it. Alright, finally, the mats. my gosh. I gotta do something real fast. We gotta go back. When did this release? I gotta see the posting day. I gotta see when it was posted. January 15th this year is when it was posted. The TPS calculation is based on max theoretical TPS. Max theoretical TPS. That's transactions per second. His theoretical is already wrong. The figure for on-chain Bitcoin holders was taken from Glassnode's analysis in March of 2023. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you have data that old to calculate with? It doesn't make any sense. He's purposely using data that old for a reason. Because data after that completely breaks his entire math calculations. All of his math is 100% incorrect because he is limiting his data on purpose by almost 3 years at the time of publishing. He is less than 2 months away from publishing 3-year-old data analysis. Now, I'm aware that when you do analysis on data and stuff, it takes years and stuff. But something you have to do when you're dealing with data analysis and stuff is you always have to go back and update your analysis before you publish. You have to take all your analysis and stuff and all your math, and you have to update it before you publish. There's a reason why, because we're going to show you the reason why. So he's going to use this P2P KH. This is a type of transaction hash, which is not the only type of transaction hash that can exist, so why not the only one to be going off of? To better represent an average user, even though the SegWit allows for 4 megabyte. Even though SegWit allows for 4 megabyte blocks, this cannot be filled with transactions. Hysterically, the largest Bitcoin block filled was 1.66. We've already seen previously in this episode megabyte block size on Bitcoin over 1.66 and over 2. Over 2 megabytes. So nothing about his math is accurate. Nothing about his math is correct. Like, sure, the way he does his math is correct. He is actually performing the math correctly, but the data in his math is incorrect. And that makes his end result false. A falsity. FUD. These are all extremely conservative estimates. They're actually extremely, like, everything that should not be low is low, and everything that should not be high is high in all of his estimates. Let me put it to you that way. You can figure out which ones are actually which ones. I'm going to my notes. I can't look at his thing anymore. It's visually irritating. So his transactions per second TPS maths is nearly right, but still off based on real data. That's what I mean. Like, the math is being done correctly, but the data is just wrong. So the past 7 years, so for the past year, we see peaks in 7 TPS, but in the past 3 years, as high as nearly 11 TPS. Let me show you where I'm getting this data from. Oh yeah, right here. So we're seeing points as high as like 7 TPS. And if we go back 3 years, we see points as high as 11 TPS. Now, the reason why I say if you go back 3 years, okay, he stopped looking at data back in like, so March, somewhere around, okay, so starting right here is when he stopped looking at the data. Well, look at all these extremely high TPSs that happen immediately after that, and have been happening continuously after that, and keep getting numbers higher than what he projected at 7.75. So 7.75 is the highest possible. Ooh, there's a lot above 7.75. Whole lot. Okay. Oh, it says we're going to be flip-flopping between two charts. What's the other chart? Confirmed transactions per day. Oh, yeah, that's right, because he has in here something about transactions per day or something like that, right? Like, is that how he comes up with part of his estimate? So he's got block size, transaction size. Yeah, so transaction size, 374 bytes or whatever, right? I don't think I can put this into bytes. Yeah, I can't even put it into that formation to view it. Maybe average block size. Maybe that's going to get us closer. And he's saying, what's 3 megabytes? Oh, 2 megabyte, 2 megabyte. 2 megabyte. Go. Here's the average block size. It's 2 megabytes. So this is the past 1 year. Here's the past 3 years. Again, so he stopped looking at data roughly right around this area. So roughly right around this area, he stopped looking at the data, and we start seeing like all sorts of high trends after that. Okay. Go to all block size. We can see some of the highest block sizes ever. You know, like 2.2, 2.1, 2.2. Way over here. 2.29. So, transactions per day, we see that in the past year, within 650,000 transactions per day, within the last 3 years, nearly 1 million transactions per day. Transactions per day, confirmed transactions per day, if we go 3 years, yeah, we start hitting areas into the 1 million range right after he stopped looking at the data. Look at that, right after he stops looking at data in this range, everything goes up pretty high for confirmed transactions per day, and the value in market price went up as well. Imagine that. Okay. So his last half of the argument in his maths is just claiming his math is. I'm claiming his math is just off, like where or what number values he is using to back his claims is what's off. So he said the largest block was 1.6 megabyte, but yet there is data saying otherwise, at 2.2 on record for the last year alone. Slightly higher in the last 3 years, though. So I am not going to attempt to argue any more about his maths, because the more you look at his math, the more you realize it's 100% just speculative data. It's just speculative data. So his actual math, he's claiming this is what he's getting divided by the 600, gets to 7.75, and then you round that down to 7, as it does not do partial transactions, which doesn't make sense. So it's 7 times 60 by minutes. Why is it by 60 minutes? No one knows. Like, oh, because he's calculating the time to input to output. And so, okay, but like, so how long would it take to what? How long it would take to fill the transactions? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, he's going to give you, oh, this is how the number of like monthly transactions or yearly transactions, right? This is the yearly transactions. And then you have this many users, which he doesn't state a number. He just claims it's a current users. And then he gives you this monthly transaction, which is this one right here. And he says, oh, that's 1.8 months to clear it out. And then you got this number, and then this many users. It's global, I guess. And then this many, and then it's like, oh, it's going to take 32 years. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. They're extremely concerned. Yeah. The security budget calculation based cost of attack is all speculation. None of it even real data. And I say that because it might be based on real data. Doesn't mean it is real data. All right, so look, he doesn't even give, like I was just pointing that out, he doesn't give the current users number. It's a bunch of other factors, like there's more than one used TX keys on chain, especially over the years. So one cannot honestly calculate the data that he is attempting to do so without being speculative at all. One cannot argue speculative maths, but can only allow time to disprove them, for logic is not considered in those maths. An example to explain myself, he claims it would cost 2.x million to attack Bitcoin in the time window, and the attack holds for 1 year, but also holds attack for 1 day, all in the same maths of his. But right now, just to power what is needed to attack Bitcoin right now is nearly 2 billion in costs there alone. Like, he's saying that everything's going to go down so much that only 2 million is going to be needed to attack, and just the value in the electricity for 1 year is 2 billion. Huge difference. That's magnitudes different. So none of his maths make sense because it's literally just speculative. And honestly, just bringing out the calculator again will show you. Like, you can adjust, like I have this pre-adjusted blah blah blah, but you can adjust it to what you need. So like actual price for a really good one, you can get one for like 8 grand. That's gonna get you 32.75. But power consumption on those things are like 5, 30. And let's go to a real electricity rate of about 8 cents. So now we're talking like a really good miner. Oh, $1 trillion to do an annual cost of electricity. $230 trillion to buy these. And you say, oh, you don't have enough zeros. Okay. Goes down to 104 million. It's literally one magnitude less. The impossible choice, okay. So what does this all mean? This means that Bitcoin's long-term security is in deep trouble. Without extremely high transaction fees or unrealistic price appreciation, the security of Bitcoin will inevitably continue to decrease until it drops so low that the network becomes profitable to attack. At which point, there's only 2 choices left. Increase the supply or allow the network to become under attack. No, those are not the only 2 options. Even if what you're saying is true, like there's probably a chance that there's not going to be as much care about Bitcoin even at that point as there is right now, if it got down from where it is now so low that it could be attacked for $2 million per year in electricity costs alone. I mean, like, if that's a possible attack well, actually, he didn't say it was electricity costs alone. I keep going on that as a minimum because that's the first thing you have to get over after you have all of the expensive machines. So we're just taking the assumption that they already have the machines randomly. The billions and billions of dollars in machines. Well, I mean, like, the argument that this person's making, if you knew nothing about Bitcoin, you'd be really scared and you would not get into Bitcoin. And he owns a company. Actually, we're going to look at that. I know I like purposely walked around it or whatever. Let's do this now. I said I was going to look at the pinned tweet. Oh, he already changed it. The last pinned tweet up here was about how Ethereum was going to do good. Basically, he was talking about other blockchains other than Bitcoin. And yeah, right here, this is the one that was up. Ethereum is celebrating record-breaking usage at 33 transactions per second, while Sol hit a sustainable 3,000 TPS yesterday. So that's what he had pinned just the other day, this one right here. And so you can see that because his entire company is involved with mostly shitcoins, he has potentially some amount of the value of Bitcoin going down might help him purchase more Bitcoin. So it might actually be helpful for him to decrease the value of Bitcoin in some manner. I don't really want to say anything more than that, just pointing out the fact that he looks at like TPS and stuff like that like it's this magic number that creates and destroys, security and all these other things. And really, it's just a metric that we use to determine generally how fast or how slow something is running. And even with Bitcoin, still running like one of the longest block times in existence, it still, gets transactions per second that is usable. People are using it. So obviously it does do something. So then he says Bitcoin is between a pet rock, and a hard place. Writing is on the wall. Bitcoiners will have to make this hard choice, blah, blah, blah. This is why several prominent figures, including core developers such as Peter Todd, acknowledge the problem. Right, there are people saying that this is a problem. Blah, blah, blah. There's always been people saying stuff like this. I am a Bitcoin critic because I do not think Bitcoin will be able to solve this dilemma in time. The solution is an inflation increase, and as a block size increase is off the table politically, something we will dig further into later. He says that block size increases off the table politically. Problem is, block size has been increasing this whole fucking time. It's just not unsustainably increasing to dramatic levels instantly, like BCH and BESV did. It's slowly allowing the natural adoption of larger block sizes, as it has always been with Bitcoin. That was the original major argument in the Bitcoin block size. We shouldn't force the change of the block size on it. We should allow it to happen naturally. And I got more about that later because that actually is what a lot of this stems from. So, okay, so I'm a Bitcoin, we read that. Despite an inflation increase solution overturns Bitcoin's primary chartered benefits, therefore betraying the promise of social contract. The promise or social contract of Bitcoin. There is no social contract in Bitcoin. If you have a social contract in Bitcoin, that's between you and Bitcoin and nothing else. Get off of that contract. You don't need to have one. They don't have to exist ever with Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin isn't anything. It's just a database. Bitcoiners who support a supply increase obviously do not believe this. At least their position is consistent. The Bitcoiners who deny that only XMR and situation by promising people that Bitcoin will always have a 21 million supply limit and jamming Gene Trust. Look, Bitcoin doesn't have to have a 21 million supply limit. Okay? A lot of people do not understand where the supply limit comes from. Everyone thinks the supply limit is calculated, it's in code. We can just go into the code and say, push one, change this 21 to 42 and it's done. That's not how it works. The reason why the supply limit is 21 million is because the processing machines, 32-bit processing, that's the highest integer in the 32-bit integer system. And it's capped just below the highest possible so we don't overflow the integer and break the system. Simply moving Bitcoin to a 64-bit system would allow you to increase the supply limit naturally. Here's another creepy thing. Bitcoin already is on 64-bit systems and can already naturally handle a higher supply limit. That can come from the halvening system we have set up. The halvening system doesn't actually technically stop. It will forever halven, forever, every 4 years, forever. Okay? That does mean that if it's halvening down to 0 Satoshi, there could still be more Satoshi left to be sent. And that is where the limit, like when we say there is an actual expendable supply limit, it's between those two natural things. Here's the thing, like when we were first starting off in Bitcoin earlier on, people realized the exhaust of Bitcoin, how much BTC it produces. was expending quite quickly, and we were going to overflow the value number in the software and in the consensus. And so the ideal was the consensus was designed around 32-bit integer system. And so if we ever needed to just increase the bit size, it would naturally increase everything naturally. And so already at this point in time, right now, there is an actual possibility Bitcoin may produce 23 point something million tokens. But it's going to take like 200-300 years to get there. Okay. So I think I'm pretty much done reading the rest of this, because this is just the attacking Bitcoin thing, right? No, an impossible choice. Impossible choice, yeah, right. So we got more to look at. So how long will it take to actually stop? So it will take to the year approximately 2140 to reach the supply of 21 million Bitcoin. And we always say it can't hit 21 million because the system is designed that it will cut off like less than 1% before the cap of the base integer that's determining the total allowed value of Bitcoin. So whatever that integer supply is, there's a, like, I think it's like a 0.1 or 0.9%, like it's a really weird percentage away from the max cap that it's going to close at. So whatever that integer bit rate value is should determine that actual point. And it's something I've been saying since like 2012. I've been saying this, and no one has been listening. So that 2140 is approximately 100 years away right now. And if the integer system really does naturally integrate with the, and if the limit really does naturally integrate with the integer system, then that actual number is probably much higher than that, by another 100 or so years. Oh, let me make sure I give you guys these. Okay, so it's a while before that happens, right? And I said Bitcoin cost to mine and profit changes based on your device, but the full truth is that it's based on your total hash power per entity you claim to be, with each mining entity having have an equal chance based on total hash rate in per entity. And to be honest, this is only based on really on like pool strategy payments, which hasn't seemed to ever be put into consideration by this Justin guy. Pooling is how many people get regular payments for non-regular block reward discovery, an uncorrelated payment system that works different per pool made. And this is basically like a calculator to help you figure out how much it's going to take you, how much it's going to cost you to mine. Like for example, I do 4.6 terahash. My power consumption though is I think 550. No, 600. And my cost per this is cents, so it's 8 cents. And the pool fee for me is 3.59. So, look at this. One of my specific miners that I have literally mines at a negative hashing rate. And this is one of the miners we saw that actually received nearly a full block reward, which was life-changing money for that individual miner. And it's costing me about $30, $31 a month to lose money on this. Bet $500 a year to lose money on this. But the chance is what? I win Bitcoin. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin if I get the full block reward. But if I go into pooling, then I'm going to actually just constantly lose money. This is why, like, miners who cannot go into a pool, like this miner cannot go into a pool and successfully mine Bitcoin profitably. But if I was to solo mine, I have a chance of profiting eventually. And I could run this for, like, I could run this $420 at the value of Bitcoin. If I would get it, it's over $300,000. I could run this like over 100 years without, and then get one block and be in profit for that whole time. Because that's kind of how a lot of this stuff works. It's only unprofitable until you get paid. So, I did claim Bitcoin isn't always profitable per day to mine. Oh, I guess I was in my notes and I skipped it, but Bitcoin isn't always profitable to mine per day. We kind of just saw that, right? And it gets mined per day. And now look at this chart. This is tracking all the unprofitable days based on relative price of the time being checked right now. Actually, even in a spot where Bitcoin is considered down in price, it is relatively profitable to mine. We're actually in the green right now. So this is tracking 4,000 total days, which had 4,000 days of profitability, and profitability percentage of 94% profitable. Means 94% of the people mining Bitcoin are profitable, with a total of 216 unprofitable days. Now, there are a bunch of unprofitable days all through here, but they're so small now, you can't even see them anymore. And have a percentage of about 5% unprofitable. Imagine that. But this is just raw data, based on averages and not actually any one person's actual experience. Much like Justin's argument, but not based on actuality, but based on speculation of perspective. That's Justin's argument. It's based on speculation. This is based on reality, but again, it's still speculation. What can I say? I mean, like I know I could say more, I could say less, blah, 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 right? So, let me get to the ending remark, I suppose. The further down you go into Justin's argument, the further from reality he gets. And, let me just... So, there's this bank run thing, like there's more in here. So, the further from reality he gets. For example, if you get to the bank run part in his argument, he's making the claim people trying to sell Bitcoin for fiat is going to add in more transactions or something entirely. Not, trying to sell the Bitcoin for fiat is going to add more transactions or something entirely. Not pointing out that exchanges use batch transactions, making the cost per transaction to better favor the business and to reduce the direct strain on the network and chain. I've talked about exchanges and various types of transactions in the various big Bitcoin question episodes. I'm going to bring this back down. So please go visit one of those episodes if you are more interested in this topic on checking these claims that I've made already. So what I'm saying is, like, I've done episodes before where I answered a bunch of Bitcoin questions and things like that. 99% of everything he claimed has been asked in some manner in my big Bitcoin questions, and I answered them. Well, the first one we did for the big Bitcoin questions was 3 years ago. Okay, so it's been around. So Justin's ending remark, though, that all this comes from the block wars. Oh, that's the part I didn't show. Yeah. So he says there's this death spiral thing, pure greed, blah, blah, blah. The reason for blah, blah, blah. The root cause behind all of this can be tracked down to the block size wars where Bitcoin was effectively captured by a small group who pivoting Bitcoin away from the original design. The original design was to naturally allow Bitcoin to determine its block size. People wanted to extrapolate that block size and make it large. Okay? And people stepped in and said, nah. So the existing Visa credit card network processed about 15 million purchases per day worldwide. Bitcoin can already scale much larger than that without existing hardware for a fraction of the cost. It never really hits a scaling ceiling. That was Satoshi Nakamoto. That's based on the ideal that block size naturally flows and moves on its own. And that's because all of the code is basically built around integer limitations. Like a shitload of the code is just integer limitations. And it was done like that on purpose. Definitely. So, like he said, it would naturally scale with machines. So, uh, I his ending remark about it all coming from the block wars is just preposterous. I claim it's completely bullcrap because out of all the chains that came from block wars, Bitcoin is doing best relatively. All three chains have activity, users, miners, networks, and value plus price, but yet Bitcoin is the one we are talking about right now, BTC. He's not claiming BCH or BSV is going to crash and fail like Bitcoin. But in some ways, I think he's claiming the other chains, like he actually mentions BCH might do better in some way or some form than Bitcoin. And honestly, I'd say Justin's claim as a whole is FUD. Unfortunately, this is all I can do. Only time will truly tell what it is. But that's the point of the show, right? It's not to completely say yes or no, but to show you how one person's, this data says X, and someone else's says, this data says Y. Which do you believe? Well, that's up to you. I showed you the graphs, where to view them for yourself, and you can see the trends, lines, and determine what you will from that based on what you see, not what others claim, including me. Heck, I even gave my actual opinion. My bad. If I actually gave my actual opinion, then I wouldn't even have done this episode of this person's claim because their claim is just ridiculous. And they sound like that someone. They sound like someone that was on the big block side of the block wars and still salty about losing, even though Bitcoin BTC gets blocks as large as 2.2 megabyte in size. Technically, that is not small blocking. Small blocking is less than 1.1 megabyte in size. So, what I remember about the whole Bitcoin block wars was one side wanted unlimited block sizing and instantly getting that block sizing, and the other side wanted the limit of the size for the average compute by the average miner seen on chain. And that's something people keep forgetting. I keep reminding people, back during the block wars, the average miner on chain that we ever saw, that we had proof existed, like, they almost always ran with like 2 megabyte RAM. You increase the megabyte, if you increase the block size over 1 megabyte, you have to have at least 2 megabytes RAM to process that. Thank you, Roadkill. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream, bro, Civ. That is what's up. Fist pound. Fist bump. And so, again, we right now have Bitcoin that does limit the size for the average compute based on the average miners that you're seeing on chain. It still happens to this day, thankfully, because that's one of the major things that has to happen. And at the same time, there used to be this rule of the very first miner should be able to come back online, because that's the original Satoshi miner, and he should be able to mine in Bitcoin without adjusting or changing anything. It should just automatically work, because the previous should always work in the current. And if you made it where Bitcoin is forcefully forced to have some amount of block scale set in stone, well, then that would not allow for the original miner to mine, because there was nothing actually set in stone back then. It's based on the average compute of the specific computer processing a SHA-256 hash, and how many times it takes to do that. 1 million times. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I hope this helps you. We do got a little bit going on after this. So let me go ahead and do the ending session, and we'll go ahead and, roll in with the roll-ins like we rolled out like we do.
Yo, did you think you know? Did you think you hold? Did you think something new? That's the goal, to see from a new degree and get the change your mind needs to find something new. Life a sudden Suddenly it's easy for many, but when a wall appears, sometimes up is all you see. So let 3D guide to the side, yo, where there's a door though. Just be careful on your way out, for the first step is a do-si-do. A little bit Linus with something different, it's almost like he's something else. And regardless of maybe, perhaps it was that missing piece you was needing. Maybe it was that simple message you was searching. Definitely it's just in different time for defraying our mental mind state, separating us from our own mental mind tank. Boom goes the blast of thought. Boom goes the last spark with part. Boom goes the mental mind tank. Don't your perspective hit on the way out. Don't let your directive stop you when you doubt. Don't let the dire detection stop you from being getting X-rated, so the photons are delighted. Don't hesitate so we can line up the hash rate. Let me surmise the time, submit the rate, and reduce the fakes while we mine our major bags. Crypto technology like cryptographic money, while hashing your life into a set of QRs. It doesn't matter, cause this was 3D changes perspectives. Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a new roll of perspective. Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a brand new perspective. Of perspective. Thank you for joining the show. Please return next time for a brand new perspective.